Hey everyone, and welcome back to Country Music Made Me. Thank you so much for joining us once again. Hey, if you enjoyed this week's episode, why not tell your friends, your family, your neighbors to come along and have a listen as well? That support means the world to us, and it helps us to come back each and every week with new and exciting episodes. Please also make sure to like, share, follow, or subscribe to us on whatever streaming service you're listening on. This week, we're sitting down with Matt Timez. He's the lead singer of Parmalee. Our conversation took us all the way back from their teenage years playing in their dad's band to the success that they've currently seen with their new hit single, Just the Way, which went #1 last year. Now, their journey has been filled with many ups and downs, but they have persevered and they have found the success that they could have only dreamed of back when they were playing bars in their hometown of Parmalee. So please enjoy our conversation with Matt Timez. Back in the days of your dad having a band and you and your brother joining it, let's talk before that, growing up. I imagine music must have been in your life for as long as you can imagine. Can you imagine a point in your life when music wasn't there?
It was always there. It wasn't until we knew my dad played, but he and my mom divorced when we were kids. And so it was really sports and all that until we were, like 12 and 13. And that's when we got the bug and started, just diving into it. And just from that point on, it was just, it's been every day. Yeah. Every day.
So growing up, there wasn't necessarily guitars strewn about the house and that sort of thing. Then your dad wasn't living with you at that point?
No, I had one, but when you're a kid, Scott was beating on pots and pans. But playing guitar is kind of tough when you're a kid, especially if somebody's not there to show you every day. Even it wasn't YouTube back then.
Right.
So there was nobody to really teach you. You had to kind of look at charts and, you out of tune guitars, just almost impractical if you didn't pick it up right away. But once I got my guitar and really dove in, it was, 2 hours before school, 2 hours after school, just, all the time.
And I was going to ask you how you and your brother gravitated towards the different instruments. Was it just natural that you both gravitated towards different things?
I think so. Like I said, Scott had a little drum kit growing up. I don't know what happened there. I do remember when we both got guitars for Christmas, and I kind of stuck with it. He was already playing drums. So it was one of those things where he just stuck with the drums. I guess it was easier.
Right. And what age was that when you got your first guitar?
I think I was 12.
So that was pretty early on then.
Yeah.
And what was it like when you first got that? Did you feel a natural pull towards it, that you wanted to learn it?
Yeah, because we were at that point, we had kind of went to my dad and told him we want to do music. We want to learn. So he would loan us his guitar or whatever guitar was left at his house. And we kept asking him to borrow guitars. So he knew he needed to get us something. So we finally got those guitars for Christmas, which I still had that first one. It's a cool, I still have that guitar.
Oh, really? Do you still play it on stage, or is it just kind of in the background?
Well, I actually, it's at my little brother's house now, and I got to get it from him because I thought he might take it up, or maybe my little nieces will play it. So we'll see.
That's awesome. And as far as your dad goes, did he sort of push you towards music because he was so deep into it, or did he just kind of let you find it on your own?
No, he was a weekend warrior, logger during the day and played music on the weekends. And he rekindled his band back when we were in high school starting our band. So we kind of started our band in high school, and he started his band back. So he started playing the clubs. We were going out to see him, watching his kids, going to see the clubs. And eventually Scott and I started playing in his band with him, and Barry as well. We all eventually ended up in one band together.
Yeah.
We were reliable musicians. We would show up. We wouldn't drink too much. We'd load all the gear. We just had to get good enough. It took a few years to get good enough to play.
That's awesome. And so you were sort of the reason for him to get back into it. If you guys wouldn't have started playing, do you think he would have gotten back into it and would have gotten that bug again?
I don't know. I think it's interesting now to look back on how it all kind of started at the same time. Maybe it did have something to do with it. But yeah, it's pretty cool to think about it.
And in high school, what were the high school bands like for you? back then? Were they country oriented, more rock?
Everything back home was Southern oriented, mostly Southern oriented, whether it would be more like Southern soul. We had a lot of like blues and R&B in our area. So that was always influenced into what they call beach music was a thing. I always like classic rock and roll and stuff like that. And then you had your metal bands, and then you had your country artists. But band wise, it was always guitar slingers and, a lot of stuff like Allman Brothers and, the songs of the Southeast, a lot of that.
And what was your first band? What was the name of it?
Early Timez with a Z.
Really progressive, really pushing the edge, right?
I'm telling you, man, put that Z in there, it just made it that much cooler, right?
And so what age were you? What grade were you in when that band started?
I think we were 14 or 15, maybe.
And what age were you then? Was it right around that time that you started jumping on stage with your dad as well?
Yeah, I think I was about 16. Well, no, we did our first show together when we were 15. It was the first time we ever played on stage was with him. We did a benefit for the Humane Society, and we did a song. And so he played harmonica and sang, and we played. But yeah, then not long after that, we would show up to the show, and he'd let me play guitar, and then eventually took over guitar for the band and that kind of stuff. So all high school years was kind of like in between my band and his band.
And so what did you learn from him growing up? When you were on stage with him, were you aware enough to kind of pull inspiration from him, or were you that sort of youth who was like, I know what I'm doing, I'm cool, I can play in a band?
I thought I did. Didn't realize how bad I was until I looked. No, I knew it was we definitely aspired to be like him. We did the songs, tried to sing like him, and play the guitar licks, but we jammed, man. We did it, and it was definitely something to look to. But back home, there was no one or no information on how to do it professionally, or you might write a song, but there was not professional songwriters around that were helping you, or we didn't know you could come to Nashville and write songs or go to school in Belmont. It was none of that kind of music knowledge. It was just get up there and jam,
And when did your writing begin?
When I was I think we wrote the first one when I was like 16. Terrible.
I was going to ask, what were you writing about back then?
Girls. Same thing I'm writing about now. It's just it's a better story. We had a recording session. This guy opened up a studio back home, and so my dad got it for my birthday or something. He actually got us some recording time, and you realize how good you're not when you get in the studio. Trust me.
Do you still have those first recordings?
Yes, they're somewhere. I don't seek them out, but they're somewhere.
And so when he retired, and you guys kept going as the Thomas Brothers band, right? At that point. And so at that point, were you still just kind of focused on the weekend warrior thing, or were you more focused at that point on figuring out just what routes you would have to take to actually make this some sort of a career?
Both of those. It was weekend warriors. We were transforming from playing in his band and the songs that he was doing with his guys, the older stuff, and then we started playing new stuff. We were, getting into college and wanted to play college parties. We don't want to play old biker bars anymore.
Right.
So we started learning new songs, and I started, going out and seeing bands that I was coming out that I was liking, and you start hearing these songs and you start seeing them on MTV or and you would just like, I want to do that, but didn't have any idea on earth how to do it. So we wrote a couple songs. And then one guy, the guy that was playing with us, his time was up to the other guy, and we found Josh and Barry, and we just decided we were gonna do our own thing and write a couple songs, and we were doing like what we call menu venues. That was the only paying gig. You go and you play for 4 hours in there, and you bring your own PA, and you'd slip in one of your original songs. You try to get it in there, And, nobody wants to hear that when they're listening to a cover band.
Right. Yeah.
But we eventually just came to the decision that we were going to do our own material, and we were going to go work every day and put everything on credit cards and go from making any money. We might get paid $500 or $600 to do a show. That's bring your PA, play for 4 hours, to maybe getting $100 or just open up for somebody for free, but you're doing 30 minutes of your own material. And we all made that pact that day that we weren't going to be, hopefully not have to play any venues where the drunk person in the front is going to be hollering brown-eyed girl at you for the rest of your life.
And when did the country influence start to take over for you guys? Like you said, growing up, it was more about the rock. And then with your dad, it was more about the classic rock. So when did country start to make its way into thinking that's what you wanted to do?
Well, we actually did a lot of country songs. Like my dad did like Travis Tritt, and we did Garth Brooks, and we did Kentucky Headhunter. So that's that kind of stuff. So we had that in our DNA. So that's always going to be there. And it's kind of always been there. It's just which way you lean towards the song can kind of always could go that way, but it was always going to be that edgier side of it. But not until we got out here, we finally got out here to Nashville and started working with producers out here. We brought our sound in, and they helped us craft it. Like, Carolina, the version you hear now is we came to Nashville and recorded it. We had done a little bit more rocking version before. But it's just really timing too with where country was at when we got here. Was Jason had come out, and Eric Church and Big and Rich had come out, and those guys that were bringing like more of the rock and roll to the stage that people were getting used to hearing it. I mean, She's Country had come out, and then that's rocking, Save a Horse, and all those songs were kind of introducing a little more edge, and so I think the timing had a lot to do with it as well.
And that's what I was going to ask you. We'll talk more about the new music in a bit, but since we're talking about sort of that transition that country has taken over the years, your new song with Blanco, back then when you're recording your debut and even your sophomore album, would a song like that have been picked up, do you think, back in those days? Or was the timing just right now for a song like that?
I mean, I think that song, it could have been anytime. The production would have been different, but who knows if it would have worked out with the particular time. But I think it would have. We did a version that I recorded with just me singing, and it was really good. It's, it sounded like some of the older stuff, and it was interesting. But I think like all that plays into it, the time and production, the sounds you're used to hearing at this current time, that kind of thing. All that has a lot to do with it.
And when you first moved to Nashville, you were basically living in your RV, doing the recording. And then when you ran out of money, you'd go back home, work a bit, and then go back to Nashville. Is that how it sort of worked off the beginning?
Yeah, that's how we were doing it. We were out here as much as we could afford. You might come out for a month and stay, come out for a couple of weeks, however long until the money ran out. And then you go back and work and get some more money and come back out.
And when did that switch? What was the year that you officially made the move, or have you lived like in Nashville at all, or do you just travel there?
No, we've been here 10 years. We signed the record deal in 2011, almost 10 years to the month. It was July 2011. We made sure that we had the deal set in place, and that we had at least a job out here. No one paying us anything yet. It was a job, but we all had to uproot our whole lives in North Carolina to move, 11 and a half hours away. So it was a big move for everybody to do, but we knew we had to do it. So we just got the old RV and packed it up and moved into a house together and lived on the floors until we could scrap up some furniture.
And back in the day, there was a barn that was your first rehearsal space. Now, was that Studio B, or was that another barn rehearsal space that came later?
No, that was it. That's where we started. Parmalee. We would rehearse out there. One of the guys that was in my dad's band, it was his old house, so he rented us the barn, and we would just go out there every night. We go to work during the day, doing construction, cutting trees, doing whatever we could do. And we meet up a couple nights a week, and we just stay out there for like 4 hours and just rehearse and write and make noise. And that's kind of where everything started right there.
And you recently did the barn session that you released. Is that in that barn? Please tell me you recorded it in that barn.
I wish that barn that we recorded that in is way, it's actually behind my house. It's my neighbor's barn. Yeah, it's way bigger. This barn that we rehearsed in was about the size of this room right here. Yeah.
And so how does that shape a band when you're starting in a space like that? You're traveling back and forth to Nashville, trying to make it work. Like, how does that shape you as a band those years?
I mean, it's everything. I mean, that's what makes you, builds the integrity. It builds the respect. It builds just the eagerness to get out there and go, and it builds the brothership. That's what you call it, friendship. Everybody's just kind of, you're all in this thing for one, and everybody's got to put in the same amount. So you learn to tackle things together. You learn to you attack things differently, and you just have this, team mentality.
Right. And before you signed your record deal, you hooked up with David Bendith. Is that how you say it? Bendith?
Canadian. Shout out to
Okay.
David Bendith. Yeah.
And how did that relationship help you guys in moving forward? Because he was the reason that you were able to record your first full length, right?
Mm-hmm. He was our first real producer we worked with. We went to New York City and recorded with him, and he really, really whipped us into shape as far as a band goes. Yeah, just tightened us up, and our songwriting was okay, but as far as being a band and like really playing well together, he did a great job of teaching us how to do that, showing us how to properly record. And just that experience was amazing, man. Just going to New York and living for a month and just walking down Times Square to go record music. It's amazing.
And another experience that you had was in 2006 when you went to California to record. What did those opportunities mean to your music, recording outside of Nashville and sort of outside of the country music hub? Did that have any effect on the influence of the music moving forward after those experiences?
Absolutely. I mean, we were told when we went to LA that we needed to be in Nashville. That was the main thing we got out of that whole trip. I mean, we had a blast. We had a great time, full on LA experience. But after writing and recording some songs, and me with some top guys up there, they were like, you guys need to be in Nashville. So that prompted us to kind of come out here and really start digging in and coming back and forth about every other year.
Right. And then we moved to 2010. And of course, the shooting incident. It's an attempted robbery on your RV. Your brother Scott is shot 3 times. He has a 5% chance of living. I'm sure everyone knows the story. I'm sure you're probably sick of talking about it, but it's a big part to your story. And I wanted to ask, the 40 days that he was in the hospital. Now, during that time, mentally for you, what was that like? Because I imagine that there was trauma there mentally for you and the other guys in the band. So what was it like overcoming that mental trauma in moving forward?
I mean, yeah, it was tough. I think knowing that we had Nashville was really what kept us kind of going. But I mean, you just everybody was just believing that Scott was going to get better. There wasn't any not getting better. He was going to get better. He's going to get out of this, and we're going to get to Nashville. We're going to go play that showcase, and we're going to get that record deal. And that's what we did.
And do you think if that record deal wasn't, or if that showcase wasn't in place, if you were still a struggling band that didn't really have anything on the horizon, that things maybe would have been different moving forward?
Yeah, we wouldn't have been in that. We wouldn't have done that show had we not come out here, though. That was the whole.
Oh,
we
okay.
kind of geared up, and everything just kind of leads into another thing. Who knows what would have happened? I don't know. It's crazy to think about it. We've had so many things that were up to that point. So many things that were about to happen. Record deals that almost came together and didn't. Somebody was going to sign us, they did, and that kind of stuff. So we had been through the ringer, but the only reason we were doing that show was we were kind of prepping to come out here to Nashville to do the showcase. That was the reason we did that Monday night, which normally we would have never done, been out doing it. So, I mean, we just still found some way to keep going.
And you talk about that business side, the rejection, the hopes that are dashed. As a band coming up, how do you get through those? What is that like mentally in just pushing through all those experiences?
It's tough. I mean, it's a brutal business. It's cutthroat. You're either the bear or you're getting eaten by the bear, you know? I mean, it's always going to be that way. You have to understand it. And but I mean, you got to show up. You got to keep working. You got to just keep on going, because nobody's thinking about what you're doing when you're doing your hardest work. You know, you're doing everything. You got to keep grinding until you find something to attach to and keep on, you know? That's kind of, we've always had that mindset, I think.
And that for you was that record deal. Now talk about playing that showcase and what it was like, what you were feeling as you were playing, and then sort of afterwards when there's those nerves of what did they think? Are they going to offer us anything?
Yeah, well, we knew the songs we were going to play, and we've been rehearsing them. We had a great set. There was one particular song that the label owner wanted to see if we would do. It's kind of his test. He didn't tell us, but we kind of heard through the grapevine, you guys need to play this song, My Montgomery. He wants to know if you guys are down to cut outside songs, you know, some songs other people written. I was like, yeah, we're fine with that. So we played that song at the showcase, and after the showcase, the label owner came up and hugged me and Scotty, said, you got it, y'all passed the test. You passed the test. So I thank God. And then we went back home, and that was in February, and we didn't sign the papers until like July. I mean, that was the worst. that stretch of time was the longest time on earth.
Well, I bet, because you've gone through all these experiences of, you know, having these things offered to you and then taken away and offered, taken away. So, and then in that span between getting the hug and signing the papers, was there a lot of worry that this isn't going to happen in the end?
Yeah. We're believe it when you see it, people. Yeah, believe anything when you see it, you know? And I didn't see that signed copy of that paper in front of me. I was like, So when he said, we're ready for you guys to sign, we drove up that next day, 11 hours, and we were ready to sign it, man.
That is awesome. And Must Have Had a Good Time was sort of the song that kicked it off for you. Now, was that recorded before you did that showcase, or was that after?
That was before. We recorded Carolina and Must Have Had a Good Time before Scott got shot. That was the production deal we had got tied up with in like May of 2010. And then we did the showcase in like February of 2011.
Okay. And talk about Must Have Had a Good Time, because that's an interesting write and production, because you were in your RV when you wrote it and produced it. You had a little setup in there. And I read that basically it was supposed to be a serious write, but then it started pouring down rain that day, and it turned into having a couple of beers and just kind of letting it flow. And that song came out of that, right?
Yeah, man, we were just kind of goofing off, and next thing you know, we're rocking it. And David, our producer, played it for the guys that he was working with. They loved it. They're like, we want you guys to cut it. I was like, all right, we'll do it. So that was just funny. Wrote it in the RV, all based on true events that have happened several times at our house parties in the past.
And then it came true in the music video, right? Because you guys actually got kicked off the set that you were working on because you're getting too rowdy.
Yeah. The mini horse used the bathroom on the ladies' carpet, so they kicked us out.
Oh man, that's hilarious. And so coming into 2013, let's talk about that, because that's a big year for you. Now, you released the single at the beginning of the year, and then in December it goes #1 as you're releasing the album. So how crazy was that to have all these years of struggling and then all of a sudden have this #1 before your debut album's even out?
I know, man. It's everything you dream of. It's pretty crazy. How it all ended up working out, but to have a song go #1 it's a special event, man. It's unreal, and to be able to drop that album and I think the coolest part was being able to go home that Christmas was a good Christmas, because we went home and we had the #1 song in the country, or just recently had it. And not just for us, but for our fans and for our family and everybody, they finally had the recognition. And after seeing us struggle for so many years, they're like, okay, finally.
And when you take that trip home, you have the #1, you have the record deal. So it's like, this is our career now. So are you driving by all those places that you played, all the places where you worked day jobs, struggling to make enough money to do this? Were you driving by those just realizing what now was happening?
Yeah, stressed out because still getting the same stressed feeling that we had when we were having to go to work every day, or trying to figure out what the next move was, or knowing Scott's in the hospital. All those roads that we traveled was a main road back and forth to get in and out of town, and a lot of memories. And just now where we're like, we can go back and just chill, go fishing, don't worry about it, don't think about it. You still, though, you ride by an old site that you cut the trees on, it takes you right back to that year when you're doing it. So it's all good though. It's all good now.
Do you have a chance now that things are so crazy, to sort of sit back sometimes, especially the past year and a half when you've had time to do that, and just look at the journey that you've been on, and the highs and lows and the craziness that it's been?
Yeah. Try not to think about it too much. We just try to keep focusing ahead. I think everybody's like that.
Yep.
But you'll go down that stuff. I mean, you look at an old picture, or something will pop up on your timeline or something. You're like, wow. And then you just think about that when we went from 0 to 150 miles an hour in like a year and a half. It just, a lot of life experiences happened, travel and tour and playing shows and doing all that kind of stuff. So it's a special trip for anybody who gets a position to put out a song and then have some success behind it.
Yeah, it's funny. A lot of musicians I talk to talk about the fact that they're so focused looking forward, they don't see what's in the present. And I look at the wall behind you and look at all those plaques and the amazing things you've done in the moment. Did you appreciate when those moments happened?
Yeah, and I try to really hold on to more things now than I did before. And I've had people tell us that, make sure you soak all this in. So we try to do that as much as possible. And I think everybody's always kind of got this going. So it's hard to do sometimes, but I think now more than ever, we just, especially after last year, kind of put everything in focus and where your priorities are, and what's important, what's not, what you want to do, what you don't want to do.
And just the way, that's the big thing that's happened over the past year and a half. Now, you released that song in 2019. Did you have the rest of the album on the go, or did you release that and then you worked on the rest of the album after that, kind of through 2020?
We released Just the Way in December in 2019, and once it started going, that's when we really focused in on a lot of the songwriting, because obviously the pandemic hit and we were in quarantine, so we really had a lot of time to write. And I'd written a ton of songs up to that point, but we knew when we put that song out, that was the focus, and that's where we needed to be going, and that's for a couple of years we were kind of shuffling around trying to figure out where do we need to be landing at, what's the sound that people need to hear from us. And I think with Just the Way coming out, it definitely gave us purpose and direction. And when you go in the writing room and you're writing songs, if you have a direction for the people you're writing with, it helps out a whole lot to know what you're trying to write. So
right,
all the songs that we ended up with a bunch of songs we all really loved, and that's kind of how the album came about, because we just had all these songs.
And you were coming off your sophomore album 27861, and that was done sort of piece by piece. You did it in a lot of different studios, and they were sort of home studios, not major studios. So coming into this album, were you focused on doing sort of a more cohesive project than that?
Yeah, we did it different because we used a lot of Nashville players on it to get some different takes on stuff, and we would go in and cut 5 songs in a day and really like come back home. I had a vocal booth here, so I was singing a lot here, but we were really going in with songs almost pretty much laid out, and then we'd do the band thing over top of it. And but it was a lot of it was just more purpose behind this. All the songs, the sounds, everything was really like, did a lot of writing with the producer, and everything was, it just was so much more intent with these songs.
And Just the Way, with the success that it was having, did that put pressure on the creation of the album to have to sort of match that?
Well, most of the songs on the album were it was what should be behind Just the Way. That's where a lot of these songs came from, is us saying, okay, if we had to, what would you want to hear next after Just the Way? If you heard Just the Way, what would you want to hear next? And we went at the writing process kind of that way for a lot of songs. So yeah, obviously you're trying to come behind a song that big, it's hard. You don't want to think about it too much, but you do need to come up with something that's, I feel like, in the same wheelhouse and the same the vibe and that kind of thing. So that was a lot of the songwriting was just speaking about that before we get in it, before we start writing, that kind of thing.
Right. And so Just the Way goes number one. And I believe it was on your birthday or right around your birthday. What was that experience like as opposed to when Carolina went number one? Was it a different feeling at all, or was it the same thing?
It's amazing. It was amazing. Carolina going number one was, we had everybody from back home. My parents came up. This was March, so it was still kind of locked down here a little bit. So it was a lot of friends and people came and we celebrated. I wish we could have had another big old party like that, which we probably will. But just everything that went behind this song from the moment we got started with it. It just felt great.
And you've been back playing shows. What is it like playing that song and all your songs, and just seeing the reaction from the crowd after this little break that we had?
It's great. The energy is so much energy at the shows because they've been waiting, and hearing everybody sing back. We missed that most of last year. The song was rising up the charts and you couldn't hear anybody sing it back. So now we're seeing the effect it's had on everybody.
And I wanted to ask you about that live performance, because I saw a video on social media when you were handing out roses to people for promotion of Just the Way. And you talked about how nervous you were going into that situation and how you didn't like approaching strangers. And I was just going to ask you about how it works with that scenario, but then the stage and just being so comfortable, just going out there in front of thousands of people and entertaining. What does the stage mean to you in that way that it makes you so comfortable?
I mean, you're at home when you're on the stage and those people it's just like you're at your party, it's like they're one big family kind of thing. When you're walking up to somebody that you don't know with a rose, they think you're trying to sell them something or something. The first girl, she ran away from me. She said, no, get away.
Really?
The very first one.
And what is the feeling like before you head on stage? Do you have nerves at that point, or is it just a calming feeling of ready to get out there?
It's, the more you do it, the better it gets, So now we've been playing a lot. It's been, you feel great when you go out there, except for the Opry. You always get nervous for the Grand Ole Opry. It's always one of those.
Yeah. Do you think there would ever be a time where you wouldn't be nervous to play that stage?
I know. No, I don't.
And can you describe the feeling at all? I imagine it's pretty hard to sort of put into words of what it means.
Yeah. I mean, not only is it like 7,000 people there, you're in the presence. Everybody that's playing, they're all great musicians, and the band that's there is great, and everybody's from all over the country, and such a pristine, honor to play it. And you're standing in the circle. It's just one of those things, man. It's just the Opry. And it's quick, real quick.
And I haven't seen your performance, but they have the Opry band, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so how does that work for you guys as a band? Do the rest of the members play, or is it just you with the Opry band?
No, we play and we get the guys, we pick out the guys to play with us. They kind of turn over the drum kit to Scott, and then we play and just use those guys to help us out. It's really cool.
And so what was it like the first time? Did you have family come up and do the whole experience?
We did. We had both my grandmothers were at the first one, my mom, and it was good. Yeah, a lot of family members, a lot of label people for the first one.
And now your dad has passed, right? Mm-hmm. When did he pass?
2006.
2006. So he wasn't around to sort of see you guys take off, hey?
Nah, he didn't get to see it. He saw us struggling, but he he's probably checking us out now, being like, all right, that's good.
Well, yeah, I was wondering when you played the Opry, I talked to people who play it and they just talk about sort of the experience and almost feeling the people that they've lost in their lives being there with them. Did you have any experiences like that, especially at the Opry?
Yeah, I think we talked about it, because Josh's dad passed right before we got signed as well. So both of those guys, were musicians, and you got to feel like they're there in the seat.
I bet he'd be damn proud of what you guys have been able to accomplish.
Yeah, man.
I wanted to talk to you about Big Blue, and
Mm-hmm.
there's a coffee table I believe you guys have in your house that is from your dad's house growing up, and the truck is the truck that basically hauled your gear around when you were kids. How important are those things to have them to remind you of where you've come from?
They're cool little keepsakes. It's always just a reminder of kind of keep you grounded. Say, okay, don't ever forget, and remember the good times and the fun things. And if you could sit up all night telling stories about us sitting there at that table. It was in Parmalee in the barn for a while too. Been a lot of cold beers cracked on that table.
That's awesome. So I imagine it's never going to go away then.
We got to keep it. It's still sitting over here, and I'm trying to figure out what to do with it. I got to put it somewhere.
And where's the truck? Is it back home?
It's in the shop getting redone. We're going to get it back on the road, and
nice.
hopefully get to drive it back to North Carolina and cruise down some back roads and reminisce.
And now, since you guys have found success, have you been able to go home and play a real show since you've found all this success?
Yeah, we played several times. We get to go back a couple times a year, whether it's back home or within a couple hours of there. We actually go back quite a bit to play. So it's always great going back.
And where do you play when you go back, especially to home? Because it's not a very big place, right?
No, we're actually talking about that. The last time we did, we played at Minges Coliseum in East Carolina University, and we've done some that's in Greenville. I played for my mom's birthday party a couple weeks ago. That's the last time we did a performance down there, but that was a little private event. But as far as the venues there's Walnut Creek Amphitheater in Raleigh, which is a big, huge venue. And usually when we're back home, it's the field parties. It's the big old parties like that,
And I imagine there's going to be a lot of those this summer, not necessarily back home, but playing festivals and getting out there. And what can we expect with tour dates? You do have a headlining tour coming up later in the year, right?
We're right. Yeah, we're kicking it off. Headed to Bozeman, Montana tomorrow, and we'll be just getting going with the tour. So we're excited to be back on the road and do as many shows as we can. They're coming in. There's shows are picking up, which is good.
Thank you guys so much once again for listening. And thank you to Matt for stopping by and sharing his story. Be sure to check out Parmalee's new album, For You, on July 30th, wherever you stream your music. Please also be sure to like, share, follow, subscribe to us wherever you're listening. And hey, tell your friends, your family, your neighbors to have a listen as well. The support means the world. Thank you so much once again for listening, and we'll see you next time on Country Music Made Me.